My name is Jill Tauber with Earth Justice, and I am going to talk briefly and hopefully reserve some time for questions from folks in the room and folks out there on the web. My two main goals for talking today are to introduce myself and my organization to the room and to the folks on the web. Meg told me that not many folks may be familiar with Earth Justice, and I certainly want to change that today. And then to talk a little bit about the work that I do at the state level on clean energy issues and really just underscore how much common ground there is and how, in my experience, talking early and often, as the other panelists have indicated, really can go a long way to find and utilize that common ground. So first, just a little bit about me by way of background, which I think is relevant here. I came into the environmental and energy work through doing community development work. I worked at a civil rights organization at the start of my legal career and worked on low-income housing issues and affordable housing issues both in the district and in post-Katrina New Orleans. And the clear link between consumer rights, low-income rights, and environmental work was just brought home so clear to me in working with clients who were paying ridiculously high utility bills, specifically post-Katrina, in poorly insulated homes, and just the disproportionate impact of that high of energy bills and, of course, of climate was so visible, and it really got me interested in environmental work and energy work. So that's kind of the perspective that I come, which is that it's a justice issue, and as the name implies, Earth Justice sees it that way as well. We believe that everyone has a right to clean energy, healthy air, clean water, and that's really the work that we do. Earth Justice is an environmental, a nonprofit environmental law firm. We have little under 100 lawyers across the country in 9 regional offices, and our goal, quite simply, is to protect our health, combat climate change, and advance clean energy access for all. We primarily do that through litigation, as we are comprised of many lawyers who like to litigate. So we primarily do our advocacy through litigation, although we have policy and communication work as well. And we work in close collaboration with a diverse array of clients and partners. We work with groups from local community groups, state-level groups, regional groups, and national groups in doing the work. And so our clean energy work is really, it's really a critical time that we're ramping up our work on the clean front. As everyone knows, really, there are policy and investment decisions being made today that are going to shape our energy future for decades to come, particularly on when you think about power plants. When you build a power plant, it is steel in the ground that lasts for decades to come. So the decisions that are being made now are going to have impacts for generations. And so we really view this time period in particular as a critical window of opportunity to advance clean energy resources. And by that, just broadly speaking, I mean energy efficiency, certainly the cleanest resource, demand response, solar, wind, resources of that type. And so we advocate for these energy resources that allow us to better control our consumption, have more control about how we power our homes and businesses, and reduce the cost and risk to all ratepayers. And so, as you guys probably know all too well, the need for these clean energy resources are particularly acute in low-income communities. I mentioned earlier just my experience with poor insulation in my clients' homes in New Orleans. We're certainly seeing low-income communities paying a disproportionate impact, disproportionately high energy bills, and without the capital to make upfront investments. And so programs, both at the state and federal level, but also at the utility level, utility-sponsored programs are really critical to enabling all consumers from all economic backgrounds to access these clean energy resources. And so on our end, our work to advance that those clean energy resources is mainly taking place at what really is the key arena where energy policy is made in this country, which are state public utility commissions. These are the regulatory bodies that are charged with approving utility investment in everything from coal plants, gas, to energy efficiency and solar. It's a forum in which I think in the past maybe has been a bit more under the radar or hasn't been as visible. When people think of litigating environmental cases, they think of federal court or state court, but really there's extremely important decisions being made on the energy front at these regulatory agencies, and so we are active litigating cases before them on behalf of our clients. And these are cases that involve what energy is going to be used to meet consumer demand. And so we're involved in cases where utilities propose to build a power plant, for example, where utilities propose to implement a portfolio of energy efficiency programs. We're also engaged in proceedings where utilities are coming forward with a long-range plan that kind of plans out how they're going to meet energy needs over the next 20 years in an affordable manner. And we are there to advocate for clean energy options, which I think the link between low-income advocates and environmental advocates really is most clear in this regard. The clean energy resources we believe, and data has shown, is the cheapest energy resource and is the most reliable energy resources, and importantly are the lower risk resources. When we talk about risk in this realm, I'm generally talking about risk of future cost increases, and so that is something that is absolutely critical to mitigate, and we believe that ramping up efficiency does that. So it provides a real cost and risk benefit, and we make that case before commissions. We have collaborated with I guess traditional consumer protection organizations, and I just think that certainly that could increase and should increase, and there's just no doubt about that. It really is an economic issue. The kind of status quo or business as usual as to how energy is supplied in this country is incredibly dirty and costly for all ratepayers, and particularly the ones that bear the disproportionate impact of the consequences of those dirty resources from a climate perspective and a pollution perspective. And so there's just a tremendous amount of common ground to advocate for energy efficiency programs, for example, that benefit all consumers, for renewable energy that enables all consumers to access that energy. So there are certainly particular programs that are aimed, for example, at ensuring that if you can't put rooftop solar on your home, maybe you can take advantage of solar through a community garden. So those are the types, community solar garden, those are the types of programs that we're looking at and increasingly interested in advancing so that energy, clean energy, is a resource that is accessible to all consumers. And so we've had some good success and some really productive collaborations across the country in that regard, both before commissions formally in proceedings, but also just working with our partner groups informally. And the more that can continue, I think the better for both, for all people involved, for those who are primarily concerned with ensuring that low-income consumers' rights are protected and that they have access to all resources, and from an environmental perspective of mitigating greenhouse gas emissions. I really think that there's just a clear link, and the goals are very much aligned, and oftentimes, to the extent there's a tension or a perceived tension, I think just advanced communication really goes a long way to helping work that out. And I think the long-lasting benefit of the one meeting that I attended on the Finding Common Ground initiative is just evidenced by being here today. I mean, I took part in a meeting that occurred maybe 2 years ago, and it was just the initial one, but I've continued to dialogue with the folks that I've met from the consumer side of things, and that has borne fruit in specific casework, but also just more generally in getting a better sense of the hot button issues and how they affect different groups' interests. So I will leave it at that, because I really do hope that we'll have some questions and are able to talk further, and just thankful for being here.
Well, I want to take the prerogative of having turned on the mic first, and this is Meg, and ask a question of each of you, but whether the question is simply whether you have campaigns underway or starting soon in states, or in your case litigation or regulatory proceedings where you think you could sure use some low-income community, consumer group support, remembering that our community action network, which is primarily who's left on the line from all of those states except the ones I've crossed off. I didn't show you the map before on the panel. They do a lot of everything in low-income communities. These are multi-service agencies. They have a profound energy interest, but that's a housing interest as well, and a services interest. So that means they get more people on buses on either side of an issue, and maybe can be very helpful or can understand better what you're trying to do if it isn't clear. Can you want to do a little recruiting?
So this is Shannon. I think Tyson spoke about it yesterday, but on the Clean Power Plant rule, we are definitely interested in the next couple of years of building partnerships on the state campaign to make sure that the state plans that are put in place, really do benefit consumers, maximize efficiency, contain costs, and also get the biggest environmental benefits. Really, all the benefits except for the private industry benefits. We want to maximize all those except for the profits of the industries involved. So, yeah, we would definitely be interested. We're looking mainly at the Midwest at this point, but if you're interested, please get in touch with me, and I'm happy to hook you up.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same thing. Each state has a local Sierra Club chapter, and they are, essentially been tasked to be part of these processes. So you can reach out to me, and I can hook you up with the person in your state, or you may know them, and you can contact them directly. I would also look at, some of the coal plant fights that are going on around the country. Just a couple of days ago, we had opposed a IGCC power plant, coal-fired power plant in Mississippi, and it was kind of illustrative of the way things are going in some ways, because we fought this power plant, we fought this power plant, and we fought this power plant, and we got to the point where we had some leverage, and we had Mississippi Power very anxious to have us let go, so we were able to get them to close two other hugely polluting power plants, and to allow a strong net metering law for solar, and to put $15 million into a fund for efficiency. So it's kind of getting clean energy benefits out of the leverage of fighting dirty energy, which has community health benefits, and it has economic benefit, the economic benefits that come with them, and at the same time, these things have to be prudent and reasonable for rates and consumers. So, I can get you, if you're interested in those campaigns, I can get you a map of where we're fighting coal plants and what we're doing. But it's a lot of them.
Let me challenge you back on that one for a moment. Suppose somebody does look at a map and sees there's quite a campaign going on, but they've never heard from the Sierra Club, and they're active. How do they interpret that and then turn it into a good thing in a relationship?
Well, it's a great question. You can, having had this conversation, I mean, you can call me and I can kind of, broker a connection. We're coming up with more stories of collaboration and success than we ever have before in working in communities and building in community stuff. So there's always a chance you have not been called at the same time. That I think the idea that your call would not be welcomed is remote.
And I'm maybe way behind because I didn't know that Mississippi had a $15 million efficiency fund.
It's only 3 days old.
Oh, well, I guess our connections down there are still sweeping off the
To be honest, they have a little while to fill it up. So, but the decision came down earlier this week.
That is of extreme interest in me. that would be the first Southern Company serious initiative in this regard. And if perhaps our advocates were part of it, that's cool. And we're just here in Washington not knowing it. Or they should be. It's $15 million.
This veers a little bit from the question, but Jill's point about what is happening in utility markets is, you know, there are all these disruptors. There's rooftop solar, there's storage, there's demand response. There are all these things that are changing the calculus for your utility. So it is a time of huge opportunity in transformation. You know, sometimes they seem more freaked out about it than, you know, than we think that, you know, the opportunity is there. But, you know, it's going to mean a lot of structural changes, and consumer and low-income groups need to be right in the middle of that.
So, comments or questions here in the room? Yes, Elizabeth.
I, of course, have a question. So, my name's Elizabeth Marks. I work for the Pennsylvania Utility Law Project, and we're a pretty unique project that of 3 attorneys who we intervene in all kinds of cases before our Public Utility Commission. And we've been trying to network and do some work with environmental groups. So at risk of kicking around some hornets, I'm just going to put it out there that it's my perception that one of the biggest challenges in getting over some of these battle scars is that when the low-income community raises specific concerns and they aren't addressed, or it goes, okay, well, we just won't touch on that while we're working in partnership, that's not a partnership then. We have to be able to move forward together, because otherwise low-income advocates are not going to be willing to hold hands with environmentalists to move you forward if it means in the long run it's going to take money away from programs that are on the ground necessary. So, you know, there's only so much money out there from utilities to do things like give, you know, essential assistance to low-income customers. I mean, I have clients call me all the time, you know, I can't cook my food for my kids tonight. I need money. And if moving forward in an environmental space means taking funds away, we can't do that. So, you know, for instance, yesterday there was a lot of talk about on-bill financing. That's something that we put up our, you know, signals that we don't support that at all because of the risk to extremely low-income populations. So it's hard to then work on leveraging that kind of weatherization funds and moving together when we know that that's a possibility that's still being pushed. So I guess at the risk of being more blunt than I should, which perhaps we all should be a little more blunt, because then we could maybe understand where we're coming from and move forward.
I wanted to interject that issue on bill financing was one we never resolved in that lovely common grounding group. That was, but it wasn't. None of these groups were on the wrong side here.
Right, and I just use that as an example because it was brought up yesterday. But I'm just saying that, you know, it's those types of issues where if we can't find a common ground, like that's off limits. If we want to work together in this space, I feel like we need to have those kinds of discussions, and they're hard but necessary.
Yeah, and I would just say yes. In terms of, you know, a lot of what you said really kind of gave me flashbacks to the Common Ground meeting that I attended, and I think the dialogue has to continue, and it is hard. And but you know, I think it's. I don't want to at all underappreciate the differences and the concerns, because there certainly are major ones on both sides. But it almost seems to me that it's almost separate from the substance. It's a process issue, or of just of making sure that we are able to, and we kind of broadly, you know, environmental, all advocates who are before, let's say, before the regulatory commissions, trying to, I think, generally advance energy efficiency, for example, but where to having that discussion about what are the potential points of tension in advance before let's say before a hearing is very helpful, and that doesn't always happen, even though it seems so basic. It's just I find that once it gets going, these are, particularly at PUC, these are rocket dockets to say the least, and everything just keeps moving, and that dialogue is critical in advance. And honestly, I think, you know, most important outside of the context of a specific case, just generally, if there's advocates who are normal players at a certain, you know, in a state always engaged at the Commission on issues of advancing clean energy or consumer rights within on energy issues, then it just to me becomes all the more important to talk before and often a specific case, so you can try to see whether there's alignment, where there's alignment, the extent of alignment, potential pitfalls and barriers. So I agree with you. So.
Yeah, I totally support Blunt. We don't spend a lot of time doing on bill financing. We're not, you know, so.
Yeah.
But
that was, yeah.
I don't know what to tell you, except, and you know, the Sierra Club is a many-headed beast. It is, you've got state chapters, you have campaign staff, you have organizing staff that are completely separate, you know, within the organization. These can all reside in the same state. The chapters are often led by longtime activists who have done the things the same way for a long time. And, you know, I think the issue of turnover and new perspectives and, you know, protocols, it takes a while to happen. You know, so I'm not going to sit here and say that the Sierra Club is now, you know, the most sensitive, whatever organization in the world, but I think people, you know, I think we have a better sense that we can't do it by ourselves than we've ever had.
Do we have any questions from off-site? Misty, or comments?
Absolutely, we've been waiting. Absolutely, we've been waiting for the chance. There's a gentleman off-site, Jeff Mark, that has a two-part question for the panel. In the immediate future, will 111D, if it moves forward, really raise rates for consumers? And the second part, will it impact low-income consumers more than any other group? And I'll let the panel decide who or among you will address the question. Thank you.
I think it is certainly possible. I think that you know, the level to which there's this strange interplay. You've got you have the state government that is required to do a state implementation plan, which is counting emissions, and you have the state commissions, which are counting rates, and you still have the requirements for prudent and reasonable rates, and how this plays together. It's pretty unpredictable, and we don't really know. But we just have to be out there with the goal that there cannot be an underclass that is somehow sacrificed to reducing carbon emissions. That's just not the way we approach it, or the way that it should be approached by the environmental community generally. So, I don't think that it necessarily will do that in any respect, but how those processes go along will be very important in making sure that it doesn't happen.
This is Shannon. I would echo a little bit what Dave just said, but I want to quote East of Eden for a second. And one of the key lines there is "Thou mayest," and that was the big the big line that they were, spent so much time trying to interpret and think what it meant. And I think it really applies here because there's definitely a possibility that some states will do it wrong, and or what some of the utilities will use this as an excuse. They were going to raise rates anyway, and now they can blame it on the power plant rule. So there's lots of room for mischief. That doesn't go against what is happening right now, though, that there's already lots of room for mischief and utilities to take advantage of consumers and pollute the environment. So, I think that it really depends on how organized we are in the states, how much we stick together, and really how much power we're able to take away from some of the utilities in both raising rates and casting this to their advantage in the public eye.
I think there's going to be a state dichotomy. There's in the utilities are simply more powerful in some states than they are in others, and the commissions are stronger in some states than they are in others. And you can. If I was a Vegas odds setter, you're going to do the best on the coasts in the northern Midwest, and then as you get into the southeast, you're going to have a really hard time. So, I mean, I'm not a Vegas odds setter, but part of it is the way it is stacked up to start, and then what's the level of effort and what's the size of the stick for getting, both satisfying the environmental expectations and requirements and making sure the justice considerations are attuned, tuned and met.